Welcome to this week's edition of the Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight, brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meigs Independent Press.
This is Carrie Rose, the Meigs Independent Press, here again with Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight. And this week, as you might notice, we've got a lot of people here. But it's a very interesting topic, and it's really important. And if you know anybody that owns a small business, or you know anybody that has really struggled, in particular with their small business, through the pandemic, you need to get them. They need to see this video, you need to share it with them. Because we're going to be talking about PPP loans. And what does that mean, and how do you get it, and what do you do with it? And up here I have representative for Meigs County, all of the banks that are here in Meigs County. And it's amazing to me, first of all, that we have this big panel. They're going to be discussing and answering questions and explaining to you what it is. If you have been struggling, you need to really pay attention to this. This is a very important episode of Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight, and I'm really excited to be able to present this to you today. And I'm very thankful for everybody coming today and showing up and working together. And you know, this show is all about Meigs Countyans helping Meigs Countyans, and this is an opportunity to do just that. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. I'm going to start down here.
Hi, I'm Mark Groves. I'm with Farmers Bank.
I'm Lori Miller. I'm with Farmers Bank.
I'm Alicia Smith. I'm with Home National Bank.
Dan Short, Ohio Valley Bank.
Brian Stett, Ohio Valley Bank.
Aaron Smith, People's Bank.
So, who wants to jump in and answer what is PPP?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Go for it. Well, I think PPP, the wonderful acronym that everyone's got to know so far, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. What does that mean? What that means is the government came up with a stimulus last year in 2020 to help businesses that were struggling during the pandemic, especially with certain government regulations, which allowed the businesses to have to shut down that were not considered essential. So what were you able to do with it? What makes it what it is? What you were allowed to do was to look at your payroll expense over 2.5 times and be able to get a forgivable loan that you will be able to, government will pay back, and you'll be able to use it to pay your employees. There's so much misconception that people don't understand, but that's the basics of the program itself.
So, what is the first step? What do you do? Who qualifies? Where do we start with? Who wants to?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. So, thank you. So, in order to be an eligible business to apply for the PPP loan or the Paycheck Protection Loan, you needed to be in business on February 15th of 2020. And you needed to have a payroll, and or you were a self-employed sole proprietor. Schedule C is also a document that can be used to prove eligibility.
Yes.
The very good thing is with this second round that started middle of January is that our farmers can also be eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. You have to file Schedule F, and you also have to have been in business and farming February 15th of 2020. So we have the ability to apply for a first round Paycheck Protection Loan now. If you did not apply in April when this started. And you can also apply for a second round if you did get the first round PPP loan. And but with that second round, there's some unique things it has to do with the reduction of revenue.
Correct. And the other thing I want to point out in the second round that's good to be known, especially for our hospitality industry, would be for those hotels, those restaurants that struggle the most, especially in 2020. They actually qualify for actually a higher advance this go round than they did last year because of the effects they've had in their industry, and that's actually 3.5 times their annual pay or monthly payroll. So that's an advantage this go round, so the government could help those struggling industries.
Right. Yeah, just to make sure you're aware, though, that's only on the second draw for the restaurants that they get that extra bump at 3.5 times. You do not get it on the first draw. The other thing I want to point out, as far as on the farmers were eligible the first round. The problem was it was based off of their net profit. Yeah. And a lot of them have high depreciations. They don't show a net profit or a low net profit. And I can only think, honestly, I can only think of one that I had in 2020. I've probably already had 10 applications that we've already submitted but had approved, because now it's on your gross receipts, your gross sales. So your line 9 off of your Schedule F is what you're going to use, divide that by 12. That's your average monthly. Then you get to multiply it by 2.5 times, and that's what your max loan is.
Right.
So basically, anybody, and sole proprietors are even able to get in on this, right?
Yes.
Is there something that, I mean, you talk about some of the documentation and things, so what do they have to have? I mean, what do you have to have to get it done? And I know the turnaround is pretty quick on these, correct?
Well, the
So
challenge is it's not just one thing that answers all of this, because it's all based on how you're taxed.
Correct.
So what kind of tax form do you have? So if you're a sole proprietor, we want your Schedule C.
Yep.
If you're a sole proprietor with employees, we want your Schedule C and your 941s, your quarterlies that you send in on a quarterly basis.
And how quick does this turn around?
It depends.
Okay. Right.
Well, it depends on the processing of that particular bank. But then the biggest depends is once it's submitted, and once the SBA gets that, how they are processing that day. They have been somewhat building this plane as they fly it. And sometimes that day there are different regulatory things that they put in that wasn't there the day before, and error messages that were created that day versus the day before.
Yeah.
And as I said, they're working through this as we are, so it really depends on that day and how SBA is processing that day.
I know in the first round, we were able to turn from application to money within about 5 days. But we had some unique plans in place because of some of the challenges that we faced with the SBA system in general. This turnaround, it's been a little slower, just as Brian said. They kind of changed the game as they want along the way, and that process has been a little slower because now they have time to review the application where before they weren't reviewing the applications. So it slowed that process some.
Yeah, normally the applications are getting approved usually within 24 to 48 hours if you have a clean deal that's sent in. In 2020, when we keyed one in, immediately you got an answer, and it was usually yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the criteria, though, I mean, we're talking about how to get a loan. The important thing is documentation before and documentation after. You have to continue to make a payroll. You have to pay rents. You have to pay utilities. There's certain expenses that you will use this money for. I know that some of the sole proprietors have come in and they're like, "How do I prove that I use this for my household income, and that's or the income that I'm accustomed to?" And that's exactly what it is. It's your household income. So you determine your coverage period, which is 8 to 24 weeks, and basically you take your loan amount and divide it by 8 weeks and issue yourself a check, something that shows documentation, or else you're going to be showing several weeks, several months worth of bank statements, which is not necessary. Create a trail that shows that you've paid yourself to keep your household running, because that's the income that you're accustomed to. And that will support a forgiveness application, because once you get this loan, you're also required to apply for forgiveness.
Yep.
And that took a long time for us to get situated for. I think that now we're kind of tackling two things. We're tackling the forgiveness side of it because we have businesses that want this over with.
Yep.
And they don't apply for, they're not eligible for the second round.
Yep.
So they just want it, they want it done. Well, there were still some things that were being decided on December 27th, if I remember right. So it took it a little while. So we're kind of toggling, or we're kind of balancing out the forgiveness side of it and the application side of it. My personal priority is to get the second round application or first round applications approved before I will take on some additional forgiveness applications.
I think another important thing to mention, we really haven't talked about any numbers. So as of January 31st, $72.7 billion had already been approved out of this last round of funding. There's still over $200 billion in the pot for everybody. So there's get your applications in, but you don't have to have it in right now. And just give us some time to be able to work your applications and get those submitted.
But there is a deadline.
There is a deadline of March 31st or when the funds run out.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the unknown, and that's what puts pressures on the group up here.
And
Because
so you
we
want
never
to
know
keep
when
that,
it's going to end.
and you want to keep that in mind.
Yes.
That, maybe not, oh my gosh, I got to do this right this second, but you don't want to let it go either because
Exactly.
the funding may not be there.
Right.
But right now, there's a lot of funding. I know you had some numbers on what you guys did just in this area.
Yes.
But one of the things that, and it's one of the things that I'm always real keen to pay attention to is, what about Meigs County? What's really happening here and what are we getting? But there's a lot of people, not just in our region, but in Meigs County that have benefited from this.
Yeah, and what we discussed earlier, I took a look at just what our region, or this coverage area of the surrounding county, Meigs County and surrounding counties, and what People's Bank was able to do in the first round, which is pretty stellar. We had a lot of employees, as most of you all here probably did, work a lot of long hours. I know that I watched the sun come up and the sun go down from my office. I think we processed just under 220 applications in this area, just short of $33 million in just this area, and that's just our bank. So we're really grateful to be able to help so many people. I mean, I think we all could stand here and talk about the stories of we run into somebody on the street and known that, golly, that person helped me keep my job. And the stories and the tears and everything that came about with that, there were so many people struggling. And just to have that warm feeling that you were able to just play a small part in their life and keeping their job was amazing.
And what has that, I know that we've got a lot of, I know we're talking about a lot of things and we're going to keep talking about that, but just real briefly, what has that been like personally? Because I know you talked about long hours. I think everybody in just about every field where we've been put in a lot of different hours, the pandemic has really impacted people in a lot of different ways. But what was it like to be able to help people? I know you can't give specifics on your clients, but what's that been like to be able to maybe save that business?
For some, it's been a true lifeline. I mean, a lot of those businesses would not be out there today if it wasn't for this. There are different levels of that. Some didn't need it as much, but there were a lot of businesses that if they didn't have this program, would not have those businesses around. And also, then it trickles down to the employees. We wouldn't have those employees around either.
Right, because that's one of the things that we looked at and we not necessarily concentrated on in the beginning because the goal was just to get them out there, get them approved. But you mentioned some numbers. I think that we, like when we did the end of the year and looked back, we were over 3,000 jobs that were saved.
Yeah.
And I might be wrong on that exact number because there was a lot going on, but that's huge to say that as a bank, without a bank product, because the Paycheck Protection Program loan is not a bank product, and that's why you're seeing all of us standing here. We were the avenue to get that money out into the community, into our small businesses, and to retain their talent, their employees, and the long hours were worth it. Right. The sleepless nights were worth it.
Yeah.
Texting with Lori at 4 o'clock. It was worth it.
You had to go there.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to continue this conversation, and we'll be back next week with more information on this, and we're going to keep talking about this in the next episode. So if you're a farmer, if you're a business, make sure somebody's sole proprietor, make sure they watch this and stay tuned for next week because we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And, apply for the PPP. I mean, apply. What's it going to hurt? This has been Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight, and this has just been fantastic to be able to have all these banks up here working together. Again, Meigs Countyans helping Meigs Countyans, and we will see you again next week. I'm Carrie Rose, Meigs Independent Press.
This week's Community Spotlight is brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meg's Independent Press.